Hello again. This video is for a particular request I've had to do programming of a smoke pump, although I've seen occasionally questions asked on the forums about how do I program a smoke pump in Jeti. So I'm going to have a go. I've never had or used a smoke pump in my models, but quite a few jets and some of the bigger petrol models use smoke pumps. So the chap who requested it has told me what he wants to do with running his smoke pump. You might wish to do it differently, but you'll get some good ideas off this, I hope. Anyway, what is requested is that there's a master on-off switch, so you can completely disable smoke pump or basically switch the thing on. But the smoke pump would be inactive below, say, 25% of throttle. So once you come up above 25% of throttle, the smoke pump would come on. But it's not proportional to the throttle. He wants it to be controlled by one of the rotary knobs, so he can turn the values up and down to get the sort of level of smoke he needs. So let's have a look at doing that. We're going to first of all pop in here, and we're going to create a control called smoke. So function, we'll add one. I'll just call it S for short for the moment. Save typing time on the video. Say OK. And are we going to give it a control? Yes, we are. One of the rotary knobs. I'm going to use P8. So I'll go into there. I'll swing the knob P8. Say OK to that. Done. It'll need a servo. I believe smoke pumps, they plug directly into the channel. They're sort of electronic, they act as their own servo, but I'll be using a normal servo here in the demonstration later on to show you the travel values. Okie doke, so in here, choose our smoke pump. Right, that's that done for the moment. And I'll just show you that there is, in fact, a smoke pump. There we are. Here's the servo. I'm going to rotate P8. So there we've got control of that. That will give us our proportional control for the moment. So we've got the basics of it working. We know we've got an output coming down the correct channel for the pump. Now we need to consider this business of there's a master switch which can switch it on and off, but it doesn't necessarily switch it on by itself. The throttle has to be above 25% for it to actually come on, but if we switch the master switch off at any point in the throttle, it will go off. Well, this is clearly a logic switch. So master switch on and throttle above 25%, pump on. If either of those is at the off position, in other words, master switch off, or throttle below 25%, it will go off. So in we go to Advanced Properties, Logical Switches, and we're going to do L1. We'll give it a label. We'll call it SM, just for short, for smoke. It needs to be on. Come down, Control 1. In this particular instance, I'm going to use switch SC as the master control. So I put it to my off position. Come to here, move it to the on position, say OK. Control 2 will be the throttle. So I'm going to move the throttle stick. There we are. Now, remember, we want the switch to come on at about 25% of throttle. So we need it to be a proportional control. And if we press it again, yet again, it stays proportional, but now it's showing the switching point. At the moment it's at 0, which means in the middle. This grey bar actually indicates the position of the stick. So I'm moving the throttle stick and the grey bar is moving around. The switch on point is 0, which is in the middle. Remember, it's minus 100, plus 100. If the switch on point is at 0 and the throttle's below it, look, it's off. And it goes on once the throttle passes there. What if you wanted it the other way around? Just press reverse. Now it's off when the throttle's above there and on when the throttle's below. Come back to here. We wanted the switch on point when the throttle is about 1/4 open, which is going to be there, which is about minus 50%. Yeah, 0%, minus 50, minus 100. So we can either use the rotary dial to move that switching point down to minus 50%. And there we go, see, throttle below it, off, throttle above it, on. Or I can simply move the throttle stick to the actual point that I want, and then if I press this button here, it will put the switch at that point, which happens to be minus 66. I think I'll have another crack of throttle open, I'll do it, and I'll press the button again and it'll set the switch to there, minus 60. I can still use the rotary knob to fine-tune that. So we'll set it to minus 50 because I was asked to have it at 1/4 throttle. So, and it's off below it, on above it, say OK. So now let's look at our logic switch. Remember, we want the condition AND. Come down here, press the button, and it's the first one in the list. Press that. Now, in logic, AND means that all the inputs must be on for the output to go on. They're not limited to 2. The Jeti limits you to 2, but in logic, AND could have, thousands of inputs. All of them must be on for that to go on. Control 1 is our master switch. It's off. If I switch it on, but control 2 is still off, that's the throttle low, the output is still off. I'll switch off the master switch. I'll open the throttle. There we are, above 1/4 throttle. The throttle switch has come on and the output is still off. I'll switch the throttle back off. I switch the master switch on. Move the throttle and there we go. Both of them are on and now the outputs come on. By the way, I'm calling control 1 a master switch. It's no more a master than the throttle is. Remember, both of them must be on. But it kind of acts like it's a master switch. I do the same thing with gyros, etc. If you've got something which you can really disable the whole function, doesn't necessarily switch it on its own, but it can disable it, then I call it the master switch. It's just my terminology. That's all it is. We say OK to that. And now we can come to fine-tuning, because we're going to do this with a flight mode. And we're going to go into flight modes. We're going to add by copying the default flight mode. Now beware, if you've already created, say, takeoff and landing flight modes in your model, don't copy them as your smoke mode. Because guess what? When you try switch on smoke mode, you're liable to find your wheels and flaps coming down, this kind of thing. So always be careful which flight mode you're copying. So say add, it tells you which flight mode it's going to copy. You can create from scratch again, but say yes. We'll give it a name. We backspace that out. We'll just call it SM to save time for the moment. There's no delay to it. And then the switch will be that logic switch we've just created. So we go into here. We don't want to move a control. We press the plus button to get the menu. Logic switches. There's our smoke logic switch. Say OK. Say OK. There we are. So it tells us up here which flight mode we're in. At the moment, there are 2 flight modes. There's always a default flight mode. But there's also here flight mode 1, smoke flight mode, which is switched by logic switch 1, which at the moment is off. I shall move the master switch on. I'll move the throttle up a bit. That's switched on, and now the flight mode is SM. I'll close the throttle below 1/4. It goes off. It's on. Okie doke. Say OK to that, and come down to the function curves. And you'll see in a moment why we're doing that. There's a function curve for S. Come across here and separate. That means separate for each flight mode. So now instead of one function curve, there's an independent function curve in each of the flight modes. In this case, default and S. come to that curve. Now, in default flight mode, which is where the pump is going to be off, whether it's through low throttle or we switch the master off, we need to force the output signal, or the servo as it were, the pump, to go to its off position, so that no matter what we do rotating the P8 knob, it can't run the pump, because at the moment it will. As you can hear, as I don't know if you can hear it, as I'm rotating the knob, the pump is, being proportionally controlled, even though we're in the default, i.e. no smoke mode. Now, you think, well, we could have, used a mixer, like minus 100%, and it would have set it to 0. Don't need flight modes and function curves. The problem there is that if you use a minus 100% mix, it will put the curve back to the midpoint. Now, maybe your smoke pump only runs from midpoint to end, in which case midpoint would be off, which would be fine. But maybe your smoke pump uses, minus 100% or minus 50% as its off point. So we need a constant curve. And now, if we come into the graph, we can dial that value down to whatever your smoke pump needs as its off position. And now, no matter how much I rotate the proportional knob, the servo, i.e. the pump, is locked in the off position. But the good news is, if I switch the smoke mode on, so master switch on, watch here, throttle above the switch point, yippee, smoke mode is on, I've now got a new curve I can use. And if I come to the switch here, I can change it to a 3-point, move down there. Remember, the sort of gun sight shows you what the proportional control, or the switch, or whatever control is doing. If I press the rotary knob, a circle appears over the point that I'm going to be programming. So I now have the ability to actually set the pump low. If I press it, it goes to the midpoint, and the pump high values required. If I press it again, go round, I can smooth that curve out a bit. So there now is the curve that the proportional control, that P8 control, is going to work. Say OK to that. And just for interest, I'll show you inside the curve again. So we're in smoke mode. There, you've got proportional control. Come out of smoke mode either through low throttle, it switches and locks off, or I switch off the master switch, locks off. Let's show you the real thing. Right, master switch off, I'm moving the throttle, nothing happening to our smoke pump. Master switch on, throttle is below a quarter, I'm moving it around, nothing happening. Throttle goes above a quarter, and our proportional control becomes active between those two limits that we set on the curve. And there you are. That's one form of smoke pump control.